Greetings and welcome to CityHawk PodTalk. I'm your host, Gina Melso, and on today's podcast, we have Bobby Small. Bobby Small is a CCD alumnus that I had the absolute pleasure of meeting virtually. Unfortunately, I'd love to meet him in person, but we explore how he worked from becoming a CityHawk CCD student to a business development partner and writer. So let's get into it.
I guess we'll just jump right into it.
Yeah.
Where are you from? Are you a Denver native?
I'm not. No, I grew up on the East Coast. Actually came to Denver for a couple reasons. My wife is from here, and I decided at that late stage, I would have been 30 or about 30 years old, 29, 30, that I was ready to actually go to school. So it was kind of start fresh, get have a bit of a foundation to be able to go back and obtain some higher education. And so that was the goal in coming to Denver. So
where about on the East Coast are you from?
Just outside of DC in a town called Falls Church.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
I lived in DC for a year.
Okay. Like in the city?
My dad lived in Old Town Alexandria. My sister lived in like Rockville, Maryland. So yeah, Very familiar with that area.
You bet. Yeah. I worked in Old Town for probably 5 years, just down close to in the very beginning of the kind of the Old Town street there, like just King Street as it got, into the businesses just before that.
Huh. What were you doing?
At that point, I was an insurance agent. I've had 4 blossoming careers. So prior to going back to school, I had been pretty successful as a at this insurance agency, and then decided that I was ready to move on after about 6 years, and then I worked as a manager at Culligan Bottled Water. So if you've heard of Culligan or Culligan, water filtration or bottled water. The old days, this lady would scream Culligan man, and that was a big deal. And so it's kind of old timey, but basically it was a bottled water company in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. So I was the general manager there for a number of years before I decided, I'm doing this. It's fine. Everything's copacetic as far as, the success arc, but it just is not fulfilling me. It's not what I really wanted to set out to do. And so that's where I decided we're going to kind of start fresh and get on a path that actually is something that I was more interested in, all told. So
that's awesome. Yeah. If you're going to have to, work for the rest of your life, essentially.
Yeah.
Something that you enjoy.
You bet. Yep.
So what was it like growing up? Like home life? Was there pressure to go to college? Did you have siblings?
I am the oldest, and so when I was growing, I did attempt some college right out of the gate, but just wasn't suited for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I had a full-time job. It wasn't just sitting on the couch or anything, but just wasn't my time to go to college. And my folks it wasn't something that was talked about. It wasn't something that was discouraged in any way, but it wasn't like, you'll be going to college, or, they hadn't set any money aside. They weren't great at that at the time. By the time I got to my brother, who was significantly younger than me, they did have that plan in place, and he did go to college. He went to VCU in Richmond and got a degree in philosophy. And so they kind of shifted just kind of the mindset, and they did work that through. But for me, it just wasn't, again, I don't know if I would have been ready anyway, but it wasn't discussed. So not discouraged, but not discussed.
I mean, fair enough.
Yeah.
So, when did you graduate from CCD?
2002. So I got to Denver in 1999 and waited until I had residency. So I waited a year. So I just worked a year until I had residency, and then enrolled almost immediately. I think I enrolled in the first semester I could. It might have been like the summer semester of 2000. And took a pretty aggressive approach because I wanted to finish my associates in 2 years. And I had the ability to lean on folks, family for various things. So I had the time to do it. And at times worked double time. Like I kept my full-time job almost until the very end. So I was working like 3 a.m. to like 8 or 9 a.m. a lot of times at the company I was with. And then I would go to school for the day, and then I would do it again, not every day like that, but a lot of days like that. Because I was interested in getting it done in 2 years and being able to move quickly into my chosen profession.
That's really hard to have a full-time job in college. Wow.
Yeah, and 2 kids, but again, luckily I had some folks helping out for the babysitting piece of it, but it was a pretty full 2 years for sure, no doubt about it.
Seems like a pretty good investment in the long run, I'd say.
Yeah. No, it was it definitely. I mean, it was such a fun experience. I think just being ready for it at that age, just really ready to embrace the whole, from soup to nuts. Like I loved riding the bus and reading. I mean, I picked up. I probably did more reading and picked up a better reading habit just in general from that time period. I rode the bus straight down First Avenue and Spear right into the campus every day when I wasn't going to work, and spent that time either studying or reading, and just it was, again, overall really enjoyed the entire scope of everything that going back to school encouraged.
That's awesome. So I have not asked you, what was your major?
It was information systems with an emphasis on programming. So I took as many of the programming courses as I could, but it was a general IS degree. So I got an A+ certification. So it was all the technical hardware, software stuff, but also a full run of whatever programming classes were available at the time.
Such as, are there any that you took that are still being used today?
No, I had to skill up when I got my degree. I didn't, unfortunately. It was weird timing. I got out of school just after 9/11 happened. So I got out 2002. So the job market was still a complete mess. Trying to, in the field that I'm in IT, it was just, I was, going up against hundreds of applicants at every turn. And so it was definitely a battle to get into an interview cycle because people were getting hundreds. I talked to folks and they were getting hundreds of emails, and so I've been in that seat now, and I know after a certain number, you're like, I'm not looking at it anymore. I've seen enough. I've got 50 or 75, whatever my sweet spot is, and I'm sure I might be missing one, but I can't keep looking at this mass of emails coming in. So it was tough getting a job there at that point. So I didn't program. Actually, I didn't program until 2008. So I got a job as a tech support person. So I started with Uray Sportswear they had an opening in their tech support role, and so I took that because it was in the field, and it was, because I got to the point after a year, I continued to work at the computer lab. So they hired me on at the CCD computer lab after I graduated.
Oh, so you weren't were you a work study as well?
I did work study, so I used every bit of work study I had available. I did two things. The one thing was cool because it was I was able to get in and do hands-on computer work and help people in the lab and do all that. And I also I had other leftover work study money that I used to read audiobooks. So they were like read audio textbooks. So I think I read. They're probably not teaching these old books anymore because it's been 20 years. But they were like math, like reading math books, like algebra 101. Page 1, just like going and doing this for the accessibility program there.
So you're a voice actor too.
I haven't done. That was probably the most official voice acting I've done. I've done acting on stage, but that's the most official voice acting I've done for money, so to speak.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So I did that. Then Uray opened up a programming position. I jumped on it. So then I did upskill at that point. I've been doing some light, but I upskilled. So to answer your original question, I doubt they're teaching any of that. I mean, they could still teach basic. There was a basic programming class called Basic, and it's a very simplistic view of how you start to organize your thoughts around coding. And so it still might be helpful because it's an easy program to grasp, and it would give a person at least a foundation on how to start. Like, if this, do that, or do this, cycle back here. Just kind of, again, it would just be a basic way to get them started. But it's quite possible also they retired that thing and it's in a museum there somewhere in the coding Hall of Fame or something. It's like right over there in the corner. There's a X++. So yeah, that's more likely.
I'll have to look into that. So you chose Community College of Denver because of the proximity. Where were you living at the time? You said you read.
Yeah, I was living just pretty much just due. I guess it would be due east on First Avenue. So Spear continues on past Cherry Creek Mall, and then if you continue on, it just turns into a residential neighborhood and kind of starts running into towards Aurora. And that's where my in-laws lived, and we were living with them in their basement. So it was like I walked 2 blocks to get the bus. There was no hopping on and off. It was one bus straight in. No, that's not true. It dropped me off like on 14th or 15th somewhere. Then I took the light rail from there. So it did drop me like in the middle of town, just slightly. And then I took the light rail in to the campus. So 2 stops, but about an hour's commute. Nothing terrible. And again, I love to maximize the time and get that reading in. Sleeping on the way home a lot for some reason. It just kind of,
I'm sure.
Got lulled after the day, but in the morning it was great.
Yeah, your brain just hurts after learning so much.
Yeah, you bet.
Was there any faculty or staff that made, I guess, a memorable impact on you?
Yeah, so I think probably 2 folks. And when I was there was the head of the faculty of IS was a gentleman named Eric Hamilton. And I know he's been retired a few years now, but he and I were not too far away in age. He's probably 5-10 years older than me, but still close enough peer wise that we hit it off. And he was a real good instructor, and so that made those classes a lot more fun and it certainly more engaging. And then I worked right out of the gate. I worked at the at the computer lab with Deborah Steinbeck, and continued to work with her up until I finally left when I got my full-time job. And she and I still stay in touch. I mean, we'll have lunch every couple of months, maybe, depending on schedules. A lot of times it gets pushed, but we're still, I would say she's the friend I've known the longest in Denver for sure.
Aw, that's so sweet. I love Deb.
Yeah, she's a great person. I've loved staying in touch, over the years, and we just had a lunch not too long ago. We just can't believe it's this much time has gone by, and our kids are all grown, and
you're all
life
grown.
Well, I'm all grown. Yeah, I got gray coming in way too much. All the hair seems to drop off and magically turn into gray somehow. I don't know why that's happening.
I guess from here to here.
It just kind of goes down and represents itself in this whitish form.
So you essentially went in straight into the workforce out of school, like working at CCD.
I did, yeah. I mean, aside from that gap where it was just I was holding out to get something in. I got to the point where I was starting to look at opportunities outside of IS. I was like, I need a full-time job now. The hours I'm getting at CCD aren't enough to sustain family life. So I need to start looking at, and so I was kind of looking at, man, what else is out there? So I started taking, applications for other positions. I think I applied at First Bank for some position. I don't know what it was, but I applied. I'm trying to think of some of I applied to be a police dispatcher. I think it was on campus too, if I'm not mistaken, which was fun. I mean, both of those were fun because with the First Bank, I got to take the, what test is it? It's one of, I'd say it's one of those aptitude tests. And I can't think of the name of it now all of a sudden, but it's like 40 questions, and it's all, this is to this as this is to this, or look at these shapes and tell us which one is this. So it's meant to be a quick, and you end up with a score or whatever. So that was fun to get that result to kind of gauge my intelligence. So that was interesting. And then with the police one, I got to do a typing test. So it was like, how fast can you, because you got to be able to type and listen. And so they put you in this simulator where it's like, a person's calling in and you've got to type all the details out of what their issue is. And get them with accuracy and all that fun stuff. And so that was also fun to see how fast I could type. And I type with 2 fingers, by the way.
Oh God.
Awful,
No, you don't.
but
No,
yeah.
you don't.
Most definitely. I'd never learned to type like a real person. I type like, pew, pew, So I did well though. I still did. I mean, my words per minute were pretty high. I was fairly impressed and my accuracy was spot on because I'm kind of looking at it. I'm looking and typing, so I'm never going to make a mistake.
Well, we need to do a basics in typing class.
There you go. Now I would definitely jump on that.
Has there been any like big life events since graduating? I mean, I'm sure there have in 20 years. So
yeah, sure. So probably the biggest life event since I graduated, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2005.
Oh, wow.
Probably had it in 2003. So that would have been, not too soon after I graduated that I started having symptoms that I didn't know were related. But then 2005, completely, full on episodic attack. And so I've been living with that ever since. I'd say that's a pretty big one.
Yeah. So.
And then, with Uray, I consistently, leveraged my experience, obviously, and everything I'd learned, up to the point where I got to school, what I learned in school, and used that to push my way into upper management. So by the time I left Uray, I was a vice president in charge of information systems. But I also started our internal charity organization called Uray of Hope. So, used again everything that I'd learned along the way to kind of position myself as an advocate for mainly for our internal people. We started off with a kind of an idea of, we're just going to do some events like Toys for Tots or Habitat for Humanity, which were all fine and they're great great causes and organizations and everything's it's all good. But I started looking at our workforce, and we had 100 or so production employees that were right at that poverty line, right at that hey, we're making ends meet kind of a line, because a lot of these folks were Vietnamese, and the culture in Vietnam is we support our family, our parents, our grandparents, any living relative that's near us, all live in the same kind of little unit, and typically only the younger folks are working. And so there was just this immense need within our own organization. So I kind of turned that around, and by the end, before I left, we had established a school supplies drive every year. So we gave away 120 or so backpacks, filled with whatever school supplies the kids needed, and then our own toy drive. Again, about the same amount of kids, about 120 kids. Couldn't buy them their entire gift list, but a pretty good, starter kit, if you will. That we would just ask for some information about what the kids like, maybe very specific. Hey, they're really hoping to get some Barbies this year, or a Lego set, or whatever, and then because we're an apparel company, we would then also add in a bunch of clothing in their favorite color, and just kind of have this Christmas pack ready for each of the kids as well. So that was pretty satisfying bit. I hated to leave that when I ended up leaving Uray. That was probably my biggest regret or concern, is that it was was not going to be able to be carried on because I was the driving factor there.
It's amazing that you started it though. Like that's wonderful.
Just a really fulfilling piece. And it turned out I left Uray right at the time when everything shut down for the pandemic. So I decided that probably the last big kind of life event is that I decided I was ready to move to something different. That I was number one, Uray I just kind of, the management had changed enough. I'd done everything I could possibly do. I felt in my position to be effective, and I felt like I'd become ineffective. And so it just felt best to move on and let them take their path, and I would take my path. And it just happened to coincide with the pandemic. I gave my notice in like August of 2019, and I gave them turned into like an 8-month notice, because I wanted to make sure they had plenty of time to find a suitable replacement, and that I could pass on all the information I needed to, and make it a clean handoff. And then pandemic, and so I ended up having to prepare them for working from home and just a ton of other stuff at the last minute.
You're a model employee for sticking around that long and helping.
Yeah, no, it definitely, it's unusual for sure. I mean, usually, I've heard people, it's like even in my position, like an executive level, leaving in 2 weeks or a week, it just didn't feel right to me. Just, and again, maybe in some other cases with a different structure, it would have been different, but it just pulling me out would have been a pretty major hole. Even though I always did I think a concerted job to make sure I was replaceable. I mean, that was my goal, was to, I was not a person who, like to hoard, I like to pass on and make sure that everybody around me was prepared to be me if I'm not there. That way I could feel free. It just happened to be bad timing. There was some job switching. It just was, just wasn't, they needed the time. So it felt right to give them that.
Sounds like a true leader speaking.
No, thank you.
So what is your job title now, and like where do you work? What do you do on a daily basis?
So coming from URA was my job, aside from being the director and VP of IT and doing all that piece, I still was a functional programmer, and much of the programming was done in the main business system that ran the company. So the financial system that they would do accounting and inventory and manufacturing, and all those bits and pieces were all in one system. And it's a Microsoft-based financial system. And so when I left URA, my thought was to really give myself some time to maybe make a complete 180 and just do something totally different. Voice acting, whatever. I really was looking for something in nonprofit. Like I was focused on the MS Society. There just were no jobs open at the time, and it was just, again, bad timing because of pandemic. But I'm still, and to be fair, I'm still hyper focused on a job in nonprofit. If one came along, I'd probably look at it because it would suit two needs. I'd be able to use my skill set and do something where, I'm adding the next layer of passion. So I really love IT and technology, but then I'm adding that, the next layer of passion into it as a nonprofit piece. So I went through that, and then it just turned out that a couple friends in the community who knew me said, "Hey, we've got this job at this company that installs the software that you use to support and program. They're looking for a person to do some consulting role, to be a business analyst and grow with that company." And so I talked to the owner there. It's just a couple, and they're a friend of theirs. So 3 people that are Moldovan immigrants. So they came from Moldova, which is just outside of Ukraine, a small little country. It'd be on the western side, so just opposite of where Russia borders Ukraine, and just a beautiful family run operation, which suits my sensibility. And even though my initial interview, I thought this is not really a good fit. I might keep looking. Had such a great conversation with the second interview that we decided to give it a go. And so I spent about a year and a half as working with many companies now, helping them to analyze their needs. So I would get in as a subject matter expert and talk them through kind of what they were doing, what the software could do for them, where there were, where we could make it fit, where we might need to customize. And then what was neat about this company is that they recognize this guy has a complete other crazy skill set that we need to figure out how to use somehow. He's outgoing, he's big in the community, he's big into organizing opportunity for reach out and for community service. So I've got to re-engage in that too, and a lot of that evolved into where I am now, which is basically a relationship builder with Microsoft. So I'm the one-on-one Microsoft liaison for the company. So I'm making contacts and reaching out and building relationships with as many Microsoft folk as I can to strengthen the ecosystem as a whole, but obviously our partnership, selfishly for the company, so that we get more business. but ultimately, the end goal is to continue to strengthen the entire Microsoft ecosystem for growing that business. So that's where I am now. So again, it's for me, it's awesome. It's kind of quasi sales, but it's not like cold calling. I'm not like just picking up the phone and robo dialing. Hey, do you want to buy some software? Or, it's more, you're interested. You've contacted us 5 times, so I can just call you, or we can, however you want, interface. We can talk about your
Like,
needs, and
I wanted to use, like Outlook and everything for a company I started. I would talk to you.
We don't do the productivity suite, but in general, it's exactly right. If you said, hey, I'm really interested in, we're reviewing different email programs, and we're thinking about Google and Outlook and Joe's email, what do you think? And I could give you, and I would give you my honest feedback. I would, I'd say, hey, let's talk about what your needs are, and I might even tell you, gosh, what you're telling me is, I think you can get by with this free program and not worry about spending it on Microsoft, because it's going to be too much for you, and the cost isn't worth it for what you're telling me you need it for. So that'd be the kind of analysis I would do, and the kind of feedback I would be giving, and still heavily involved in the community side of it. So I just got back from Arizona. There's a couple big community events where users get together and peer sharing. So it's like, hey, I use it, so do I. What problems do you have? I have the same problems. Let's talk about it, and be happy together once we figure things out. And I'm over there going, yeah. And if you have any other questions, here we are. And so I've helped organize these events for years as a user when I was using it with Uray, and then luckily trusted enough to keep going in my current position, to keep organizing and helping out there. So yeah, it was kind of a fun event. It was in Scottsdale, Arizona. It was 102 degrees on average every day, but It was a dry heat. It was very dry, and it really was. I mean, it was like, I don't. You said you were in DC there. You know how it can be humid and just terribly sticky, awful. So it wasn't that. Like you get a little bit of shade, and all of a sudden it's warm, but it's not bad.
If you say so. But that's super cool that you're involved. You've been involved with, setting all this up and being an active part.
Yeah.
So you've reached.
I will tell for just a second. I'm going to show you because I just got back, so I'm still unpacking. But can't see it. I got a community award. I don't know why it's not showing up. It's like it's purposely blurring the logo. It's like we can't show the logo.
Oh,
it's against their. Anyway, I got a community award, which was unexpected, but basically for being an advocate and a brand builder, and helping to promote the community. So that was fun.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
You've reached quite a few big, milestones in your career since graduating. Have you set any other goals that you have not yet accomplished? I have.
Thank you for asking. I have got, I fancy myself to be a decent writer. And so I turned 55 this year. When I was turning 50, I had this thought and idea for a book, and I started writing it, and I got maybe a chapter done. I thought, this is good. I'm really flowed right out. And then it kind of sat, and it sat, and it sat. And every once in a while I would pick it back up and look at it. So this past year, I decided, 2022, I decided I'm finishing this thing. So I set a goal and I wrote every day, and I finally finished it earlier this year. So I'm in my second round of editing. It'll end up being I want it to be about 25,000 words. So I'm going back through and editing for continuity, and then also editing for content and adding and expanding and trying to build a better story. I would call it a semi-autobiographical view of turning 50 and being me. So it'll be interesting to see once I'm done, what I do with it, but it doesn't matter. If I get it done, I'll be super happy that I get that, accomplished. But I think the end goal would be to possibly get it published.
Oh, dude, you've accomplished all these other goals. You can get that published. I'll buy a copy and save it for 20 years.
There you go. Yeah, just open it, put it in a time capsule, and open it up at 50, and then commiserate with me. But You have to read it over the next 5 years after that, because it took me 5 years to finish it. So start it at 50 and then slowly get through it. Right?
Oh man, such is life.
Yeah. So I have another book as well that I'm working on. It's more of a fluff mystery book that is set in Denver. So I keep reading these like locality based novels. There was one for Richmond that my mom loves to read, and they're really, easily written and read. So they're not super, in-depth writing or complex writing. It's an easy story, but they're fun because they're set in the town. Like, it's like, this happened and people read it, it's like, wow, I just had lunch there. It's just all the little, name drops and Easter eggs that you find. And so I said, I could write one of these books, of course. So again, I've got to start and a full outline. I just need to keep cranking on it. So that's my next, I'll jump into that and try to get a finished product to get published. But it's called Red Rocks, in case you're wondering, a murder at Red Rocks. So be on the lookout.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Amazon Books.
Amazon Books. It'll be somewhere. It'll be me on a corner, setting up shop if need be. But somewhere, I'm hoping it'll be out there.
I did not know that. Well, I don't want this to come out wrong. I didn't realize that people that use their brain for like IT stuff could also be so good at writing.
I would say that
works. My creative little brain. IT stuff is not my forte, so kudos to you.
So going way back, when I came out here, my actual goal was to be an artist. Like I was going to get a degree in graphic or creative art. And I was working at a job. I got a job in a kind of a creative field. It was fun. It's there's a process when you are creating an embroidered design for a T-shirt that you have to take the art. And if you just picture a piece of art that's on a T-shirt, and you have to actually map all the stitches. So you take this piece of art and say, I want this, I want the lake to be a stitch that's like what's called a fill stitch. It's all one giant thick fill, and then the edges I want some waves that are going to be little satin stitches in the middle that give it a wave look, and then the trees are different stitches, and they have to be sewn in a certain pattern in a way to make them sew properly so that it doesn't get all bunched up. And if you've ever seen some really bad embroidery designs, they can be puckered and twisted, and there's a way to sew it so that it doesn't do that. And so I learned that craft while I was waiting. That 1 year leading up to getting to school, I learned how to do this. It's called digitizing, and I did that for that year, and I did that all the way through school up until my final semester, where I did stop and I just wanted to focus on school for the final semester. I had to do capstone and all those things. So I just said, that's going to do. Not going to work. It's going to, just going to do school only. And so within that time period, I met a lot of artists, obviously, and to a person, they're like, if you want to make money, change your mind on being an artist. And so I decided at the end that I could do IT and make money and still do fun art stuff on the side, right? Just to find ways to be creative, whether it's acting or singing or writing, that I could do these when I was able to carve out that time or made time for it. So
you have many layers to you. So
like the onion, like Shrek and the onions. Peeling them back.
Do you have anything that you've embroidered, like on the house or anything?
I don't. Yeah, I do somewhere, but it's crazy. I had my very first embroidered design said "Go hard or go." It was just a straight text logo that said "Go hard or go home." There was somebody's logo that we had to do, and that was their like tech catchphrase or whatever. And I have that somewhere because it was the very first one I did. And my office is upended because we had a flood in the basement. And so everything is boxed up somewhere. But yeah, I had that. And the other one I used to have, which is probably my favorite one, I got to digitize SpongeBob under the sea with all the cool, seaweed and some other for a bucket hat that I used to have. And I just don't know what happened to it. I'm so disappointed. It was white with blue rim, and just the nature of how it was digitized was cool. I would have liked to have had that.
How are you going to lose a bucket hat, nonetheless, a bucket hat that you designed?
I know. I don't know what happened there. Like I said, I'm super disappointed. It'll never come back now.
Well, that's unfortunate. I would love to see that from you.
Yeah.
You'll have to send me a picture, though, of that shirt when you do find it.
Yeah, when I get everything back in order, I keep it up just as kind of a timeline reminder of where I started. And it's I wouldn't say I'm not a what would you call, like a testosterone, like, yeah, you go hard or go home kind of person, but I do have a diligence about me, and I think that it still captures that. It's like, yeah, I'm going to work hard at everything I do. I may not go home, I may stay, but at the end of the day, I'm going to work hard, and I think that, and plus again, it took me a long time to get the digitizing right on that first design. It was like a week-long process to learn the ins and outs to get it to sew proper, and so it meant a lot.
That's so cool. Do you have any photos of you when you graduated from CCD?
That's a good question. I'm sure I do, but not digitally, strangely, because that was,
I figured not really.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't even think we had a digital camera. I think at the time. But I'm sure somewhere in a box, there's a photo, somewhere. But I'll have to dig on that. Yeah.
If you find it, let me know.
Yeah. Nope. I will take a look. Yeah.
You from now and then.
Yeah.
Well, Bobby, thank you so much for talking to me.
Yeah, of course.
It's lovely to meet you. You seem like a very interesting person. You're very fashionable.
Oh,
I can tell by like the hoodie with like, the little cotton blend jacket. It looks like we got going on. I dig it.
You can't see it's purple, which is good for it's CCD colors, but it's also my company colors too. So I go all in, with where I just left this conference. I have a full purple wardrobe, so people will see me coming and going. The guy in purple.
The guy in purple. Well, wonderful. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing your books, plural books published.
Of course, yeah. As soon as I get them out, I'll spread the word for sure.
Awesome. Well, I will keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you, Gina. I appreciate it.
Have a good one.
Yep. You too.